"You are not one of us," my Aunt Margaret said, her voice dripping with finality. "You never were." I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a cream envelope, placing it directly in front of Grandma's memorial photo. What happened next changed everything they thought they knew about family. It was supposed to be a celebration of life. Grandma Rose's 90th birthday memorial brunch at the country club. White tablecloths, mimosas, and enough flowers to fill a funeral home. Instead, it became the day I finally chose myself over their version of family. Sometimes, healing isn't about forgiveness. It is about understanding your own worth beyond the stories others tell about you. My story began in a family where silence was currency and compliance was love. For 23 years, I had been paying that price. Let me take you back to where it all started. I was 7 when my mother died in that car accident on Highway 52. 7. When I became the family's burden. My mom had been the black sheep, the one who got pregnant too young, who never quite fit their pristine suburban mold. When she died, I inherited her role as the outsider. "We will take her in," Uncle Peter had announced at the funeral, like I was a stray cat. Family is family. But family, I learned, came with conditions. While my cousins Sarah and Michael got birthday parties with pony rides and magicians, I got lectures about gratitude. They had summer camps and ski trips. I had summer jobs and character-building chores. At 14, I was scrubbing grease off plates at Murphy's truck stop, saving every dollar for a future they didn't think I deserved. "You are lucky we kept you," Aunt Margaret would remind me when I asked why I couldn't join the family vacation to Disney World. Most families wouldn't bother. Lucky. That word followed me everywhere. Lucky to have a roof over my head. Lucky to eat their food. Lucky to share their name, even though I never quite felt like I belonged to it. But I was smart. Smarter than they gave me credit for. I studied hard, got scholarships, made something of myself despite their expectations. Not because of them. By 25, I had a degree in accounting, a good job at Morrison & Associates, and a plan to move across the country and start fresh. Then Grandma Rose started forgetting things. At first, it was small stuff where she put her keys, whether she would take in her morning pills, but then she forgot how to use the coffee maker she would had for 20 years, forgot the names of her great-grandchildren, forgot that my mother was gone. The family had meetings about her care, meetings I wasn't invited to. "We need to figure out what to do about Rose." I overheard Uncle Peter telling Aunt Margaret during Christmas dinner. "She cannot live alone anymore. Assisted living," Aunt Margaret said. "There is a nice place in Brookfield. Clean professional. Too expensive." Uncle Peter replied, "Have you seen what those places cost?" That is when Cousin Sarah chimed in. "What about Katie? She is not married. No kids. She could move in with Grandma." They talked about me like I wasn't sitting 10 feet away, loading their dishwasher. "That is actually not a bad idea," Aunt Margaret mused. "Katie's always been good with her, and it would save us a fortune. Save them a fortune. Not help Grandma. Not ensure she got the care she needed. Save them money. I didn't volunteer. I was voluntold. We have decided you should move in with Rose." Uncle Peter announced the next day temporarily. Just until we figure out a permanent solution. I was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to sacrifice my life for their convenience. And in a way, I was Grandma Rose had been the only one who ever made me feel truly wanted. She remembered my birthday without prompting, asked about my job, listened when I talked about my dreams. Just temporarily, I told my boss at Morrison & Associates. 6 months, maybe a year. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of watching the woman who raised my mother slowly disappear. 3 years of bathing her when she forgot how showers worked. 3 years of hiding sharp objects because she would started seeing intruders who weren't there. 3 years of driving to 4 different pharmacies to find her heart medication because the local one was always out of stock. 3 years of the family checking in with phone calls that lasted exactly long enough to ease their guilt. "How is she doing?" they would ask. "Fine," I would say. Because what else could I say? That she would forgotten how to use a fork. That she called me by my mother's name more often than my own. That I would given up my promotion to Davidson and Company to become her full-time caregiver. They didn't want details. They wanted absolution. "You are so good with her," Aunt Margaret would coo during her monthly 15-minute visits. "It is like you were meant for this." meant for this. Like caring for family was my destiny, not my choice, like I was some kind of saint who didn't have dreams, ambitions, or a life of my own. The truth was messier. Some days I resented it, resented her, resented them. When I had to cancel another date with David because Grandma was having a bad night, when I had to explain to my boss why I couldn't travel for client meetings anymore, when I watched my savings account drain to cover her medical expenses that insurance didn't touch. But most days, I just loved her. Loved the woman who had sung me to sleep when the nightmares came, who had taught me to balance a checkbook and change a tire, who had looked at me like I mattered when everyone else looked through me. Key moments of personal transformation often arrive quietly without fanfare. They are not dramatic explosions but subtle shifts, a realization that your boundaries matter more than someone else's comfort. Mine came on a Tuesday in March. I was in Grandma's kitchen, sorting through a pile of medical bills that would have made a grown man cry. Physical therapy, $847. Prescription medications, $1,200. Home health aid, $950. All from my credit cards because the family had mysteriously become unavailable when it came to actual financial support. The phone rang. Cousin Sarah. Hey, Katie, quick question. Mom wants to know if you can handle Grandma's birthday party this year. You know, since you are there anyway. Handle it, plan it, pay for it, clean up after it, while they showed up for photos and left before the dishes needed washing. Sure, I said, because that is what I always said. Great. Oh, and can you make sure she is wearing something nice? Mom's bringing her camera. Something nice for the grandmother. They visited twice a year that night. I sat in Grandma's living room, watching her sleep in her recliner. She looked so small, so fragile. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I was angry, not at her, never at her, but at them, at the family who had somehow convinced me that my life was less valuable than their convenience, that my dreams were negotiable, that my worth was measured by how much I could sacrifice without complaint. The next morning, I called Mr. Henderson, Grandma's lawyer, the same attorney who had handled her affairs for 30 years. I need to understand something, I told him, about my legal status, my grandmother's care. Of course, he said. Come in this afternoon. His office smelled like old books and coffee. Legal degrees covered the walls, along with photos of grandchildren I would watched grow up through annual Christmas cards. Your grandmother appointed you as her primary caregiver, he explained, pulling out a thick file. You have power of attorney for both medical and financial decisions when she is incapacitated. Since when? 2 years ago, right after her diagnosis. 2 years. 2 years I would been legally responsible for every major decision while they treated me like hired help. There is something else, Mr. Henderson said quietly. She updated her will recently, asked me to ensure everything was in order. He slid papers across his mahogany desk, legal documents with official seals and careful signatures. I was her sole heir, not because of blood, because of choice. She was very specific about her reasoning. He continued, said you were the only one who stayed when staying was hard. I stared at the documents, trying to process what I was reading. The house, the savings, the small investment portfolio she would been building for decades, everything. She also asked me to give you this, Mr. Henderson said, handing me an envelope with my name written in Grandma's careful script. Inside was a letter. 2 pages of her handwriting, shaky but determined. Fakady * fake if you are reading this. I am either gone or too far gone to say these words myself. I need you to know something important. * you are not charity. You are not obligation. You are not the consolation prize for a family that couldn't be bothered to love you properly. * you are choice. My choice. Every day for 3 years, you chose me when choosing me was hard. When it cost you jobs and relationships and dreams. * shows, you write back. * Margaret and Peter think family is blood and tradition and showing up for photos. But family is showing up for the hard days. The scary days. The days when love looks like changing bedsheets at 2 a.m. and pretending you don't mind. * you minded sometimes. I could tell, and I loved you for staying anyway. * don't let them take credit for raising you. You raised yourself. into someone worth knowing, someone worth choosing. Fay choose yourself now. Fay all my love. Fay Grandma Rose Fay, I cried in that office. Not pretty tears, but the ugly heaving sobs of someone who had been holding their breath for 23 years. Mr. Henderson handed me tissues and waited patiently while I put myself back together. There is one more thing, he said when I could speak again. Your grandmother documented some concerning incidents. Family members removing items from her home without permission, financial irregularities before you took over her care. My stomach dropped. What kind of items? Jewelry. Small antiques. Things they assumed she wouldn't miss. His expression was grim. There are photos. Dates. Values. Of course there were. Grandma Rose had been a secretary for 40 years. She documented everything. What does this mean? I asked. It means if they contest the will, we have evidence of their character, their priorities. He paused. It means you are not defenseless. I walked out of that office feeling different. Not just sad or angry, but something I hadn't felt in years, powerful. The memorial brunch was Uncle Peter's idea, celebrating Rose's life. He called it, at the Brookfield Country Club. Naturally, the same place they would had Sarah's wedding reception and Michael's graduation party. The same place I would never been invited to before. Family only. Aunt Margaret specified when she called with the details. Like I might forget my place. I almost didn't go. What was the point? One more gathering where I would smile politely while they reminisced about a woman they would barely visited. One more chance to be invisible in plain sight. But something told me I should be there. Maybe it was Grandma's voice in my head. Maybe it was just instinct. Or maybe it was the envelope Mr. Henderson had given me, sealed and marked for the memorial service. I wore the black dress Grandma had bought me for college interviews. The good one. The one that made me feel like I belonged somewhere important. They were all there when I arrived. Aunt Margaret in her designer suit, jewelry glittering like armor. Uncle Peter with his golf tan and expensive watch. Cousins Sarah and Michael with their perfect families, children dressed like catalog models. Extended relatives filled the other tables, people I hadn't seen since the funeral, people who remembered Grandma through Christmas cards and birthday calls. The centerpiece was a photo of Grandma from her 70th birthday, smiling, surrounded by flowers, looking like the kind of grandmother who baked cookies and told bedtime stories, which she had been, for those lucky enough to earn her attention. Everyone except the person who had mattered most. The speeches started predictably. Uncle Peter talked about Grandma's garden. Aunt Margaret shared memories of holiday dinners. Cousin Sarah read a poem about angels and eternal love. Generic stories that could have been about anyone's grandmother. Safe stories that didn't require actually knowing the person they were memorializing. Then, Aunt Margaret stood for the final toast. Rose would want us to remember what family means. She began, champagne flute raised, the bonds that tie us together, the blood that runs deeper than water, the traditions that define who we are. Her eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on faces that nodded in agreement. She would want us to honor the legacy she built, the real family she created. Another pause, another sweep of the room, and let's be honest here. Not everyone sitting at these tables truly belongs to that legacy. Her gaze landed on me, held steady. The room went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the servers paused in their careful choreography. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I would carried for 23 years, that I was a guest in my own life, a charity case, an obligation wearing a borrowed name. But this time was different. This time, I had the envelope. My narrative wasn't about revenge. It was about choosing myself, understanding that family isn't just blood, but mutual respect. Each legal document, each conversation became a step towards reclaiming my narrative. I stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room turn toward me. My hands didn't shake as I reached into my purse. My voice didn't waver as I spoke. "You want to talk about belonging?" I asked, placing the cream envelope on the table, right where Grandma would have sat if she were still here to defend herself. "Let's talk about belonging." I opened the envelope carefully, like I was handling something precious. Because I was. The first document I pulled out was my birth certificate, clean white paper with official seals and careful typing. "Birth certificate," I announced clearly. with Rose Henderson listed as my legal guardian after my mother's death. Aunt Margaret's confident smile faltered slightly. Medical power of attorney, I continued, spreading the next paper on the white tablecloth. Signed 2 years ago when Grandma's dementia was diagnosed. Uncle Peter leaned forward, squinting at the legal language he would never bothered to read. Financial power of attorney. Same date. Another document joined the growing collection, giving me legal authority over all her medical and financial decisions. The silence was becoming uncomfortable now. People shifting in their chairs, looking anywhere but at the papers I was displaying like evidence in a courtroom. Bank statements? I said, pulling out a thick stack of papers, showing transfers from her account to mine. For medications, physical therapy, home health aides, groceries, everything she needed that insurance didn't cover. My voice stayed calm, professional, like I was presenting quarterly reports instead of dismantling their narrative. Receipts for medical equipment, hospital bills, prescription costs. Each paper found its place on the table, all paid from my personal accounts because the family was too busy to handle financial details. Cousin Sarah's face had gone pale. Her husband was staring at his plate like it might offer escape. And this, I said, holding up the final document. The one Mr. Henderson had prepared specifically for this moment. A handwritten letter. In her own words, signed and witnessed by her attorney. I unfolded the paper carefully, smoothing out the creases. When I read aloud, my voice carried clearly through the silent dining room to the family who will read this after I am gone. You will be surprised by my final decisions. You will call them unfair. You will claim Katie manipulated me, took advantage of my illness. A few gasps echoed through the room. You will be wrong. Katie did not ask for this inheritance. She didn't know about it until after my death. Every choice I made was my own, witnessed by lawyers and doctors who can confirm my mental competency. Uncle Peter's face was red now. Whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. You may wonder why I chose her over my own children and grandchildren. The answer is simple. She chose me when choosing me was hard. I paused, looking around the room at faces I would known my whole life. For 3 years, Katie sacrificed her career, her relationships, her future to ensure I lived with dignity. She held my hand through chemo appointments none of you attended. She changed my bed sheets when I forgot how to be clean. She paid for my medications when my insurance fell short. Aunt Margaret was shaking her head, mouth opening and closing without sound. She did not do this for money. She did it for love. The kind of love that shows up at 2 a.m. when I was scared and confused. The kind of love that doesn't require an audience or applause. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back with the other documents. That is family, I said simply. Not blood, not tradition, not showing up for photos and leaving before the hard work begins. From the corner of the dining room, a figure stepped forward. Mr. Henderson, still in his funeral suit, briefcase in hand. I am Robert Henderson, he announced to the room, Mrs. Rose Henderson's attorney for 30 years. I am here to execute her final wishes and address any questions about the validity of these documents. The real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in recognizing that my voice matters, that my truth doesn't require permission. Aunt Margaret found her voice first, though it came out as more of a croak. This is ridiculous. Katie manipulated her. Rose had dementia. She wasn't competent to make these decisions. Mr. Henderson's response was swift and professional. Mrs. Henderson's mental competency was evaluated by 3 independent physicians before any legal documents were signed. All confirmed her cognitive clarity regarding financial and legal decisions. But we are her children, Uncle Peter protested, his voice rising. Her real family. This isn't right. Real family, there it was. The phrase that had haunted me for 23 years. I stood completely still, letting his words hang in the air like smoke. You want to know about real family? I asked quietly. The room leaned in to hear me. I cleaned her bed sores while you were on a cruise to Alaska. Aunt Margaret's mouth opened, but no words came out. I held her hand through chemo appointments while you sent cards. Expensive cards with your names printed inside. Uncle Peter shifted uncomfortably. Now wait. Just I gave up job opportunities, ended relationships, canceled plans, spent my savings, because that is what you do when you love someone. I looked around the room, meeting eyes that suddenly couldn't hold my gaze. You want to talk about blood? Let's talk about loyalty, about showing up when showing up is inconvenient, about choosing someone every single day, not just when it serves your interests. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. There are additional matters that need to be addressed. Mrs. Henderson documented several concerning incidents involving family members removing valuable items from her home without permission. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jewelry that went missing during holiday visits. Small antiques that disappeared after family gatherings. Items that Mrs. Henderson noticed were gone, but was told she had misplaced. Cousin Sarah was staring at her lap now, her husband's face a careful mask of neutrality. We have photographs, dates, estimated values. Witness statements from neighbors who saw items being removed. Uncle Peter's face had gone from red to ashen. You cannot prove we can, and we have? Mr. Henderson interrupted smoothly. Mrs. Henderson was meticulous about documentation. Security cameras, financial records, timeline evidence. He paused, looking around the room like a professor addressing unruly students. These matters can be discussed privately with the families involved, or through proper legal channels if necessary. The threat was subtle but clear. I picked up my purse, smoothed my dress, and prepared to leave. But first, I had one more thing to say. I am not angry. I announced to the room, and I meant it. The rage that had consumed me for weeks had transformed into something cleaner. Something that felt like freedom. I am not seeking revenge or trying to hurt anyone. I am just done pretending that obligation is the same thing as love. I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against the marble floor with a confidence I would never felt before. At the door, I stopped and turned back one last time. The funeral was beautiful. By the way, thanks for asking my opinion on the arrangements. Oh wait, you didn't. No one responded. True healing isn't about proving others wrong. It is about proving to yourself that you are worthy of your own protection. 3 months later, I was still hearing about the fallout. Aunt Margaret's boutique lost half its regular customers. Word travels fast in small towns, especially when it involves family drama and questionable ethics. The story had grown in the telling, as stories do, but the core remained the same. She had mistreated her own family. Uncle Peter was quietly asked to step down from the hospital charity board. Conflict of interest, they called it. But everyone knew what it really meant. Cousin Sarah stopped posting family photos on social media. Hard to maintain the perfect family image when your treatment of elderly relatives becomes public knowledge. Michael moved his family to another state, claiming a job transfer, but their departure felt more like escape. The extended family started calling me. Cousins I barely knew. Aunts and uncles from Grandma's side who had heard whispers of what happened at the memorial. We always wondered why you weren't included more. My second cousin Ellen told me over coffee. Rose talked about you constantly when she visited us, how proud she was, how worried she was about your sacrifices, so she had seen it that way too. She used to say you were the only one who inherited her backbone, Ellen continued. Her sense of justice, her refusal to let people take advantage. Maybe that is why the envelope felt right. Why speaking up felt necessary. Not for revenge, but for truth. I didn't feel triumphant about their struggles. I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that they had chosen pride over love, appearance over authenticity. But I also felt something I would never experience before. Peace. Mr. Henderson helped me navigate the legal complexities with patience and humor. Probate court, asset transfers, tax implications. Turns out, Grandma had been more financially secure than anyone realized. Decades of careful saving and smart investments had created a comfortable nest egg, more than enough to honor her memory properly. The house needed work. 30 years of deferred maintenance had left its mark, but the bones were good, like Grandma always said. Strong foundation, solid structure. Just needed someone who cared enough to restore it. I painted the kitchen sunshine yellow, her favorite color, replanted the backyard garden with tomatoes and herbs and the roses she would loved, fixed the porch swing where she used to sit and watch birds at the feeder. Slowly, the house came back to life. At Christmas, I made dinner for one. No drama, no walking on eggshells, no performing gratitude for scraps of affection. Just peace. I set a place for Grandma at the table, complete with her good china and the cloth napkins she saved for special occasions. It felt right, like she was still there, approving of my choices. The scholarship fund I established in her name accepted its first applicant in January, a girl named Maria, 17, aging out of foster care and determined to study nursing. She reminded me of myself at that age, scared but determined, grateful for any kindness but fierce about earning it. "Why me?" she asked when I handed her the first check. "Because you showed up," I said. "Even when showing up was hard. That is what matters." Showing up, the scholarship requirements were simple: academic achievement, financial need, and evidence of personal resilience. No family recommendations required, no legacy preferences. Just proof that you had survived something difficult and chosen to keep growing. Grandma would have approved. Sometimes people ask if I miss them. My aunt, my uncle, the cousins who used to be part of my everyday vocabulary, I miss the idea of them. The family I thought we could be if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, stayed quiet enough. But I don't miss the reality, the constant performance, the gratitude tax for existing in their space. Real family doesn't require auditions. Last month, I received a card in the mail from Aunt Margaret, a generic thinking of you design with a printed message inside and her signature at the bottom. Just like old times, I threw it away without reading the printed sentiment. Not out of anger, out of choice. Some chapters close themselves, and that is okay. I am writing new ones now, in a sunshine yellow kitchen with herbs growing on the windowsill, with space for whoever chooses to stay and build something real. In the end, family isn't about keeping secrets. It is about seeing each other, truly seeing each other. When you have spent years being the background character in your own life, standing up feels like an earthquake. Not violent, but fundamental, a complete restructuring of internal landscapes. That is the thing about family I have learned. Blood makes you related, choice makes you family, and I choose differently now. I choose people who show up when showing up is inconvenient, people who see my worth without requiring proof, people who understand that love is a verb, not just a feeling. I choose myself. Was I wrong to do it publicly? Should I have stayed quiet to keep the peace that was never really peace? Maybe, but some truths deserve to be told, even at memorial brunches, even when they make people uncomfortable, especially then. Because Grandma Rose was watching, and she deserved better than whispered secrets and careful omissions. She deserved the truth about who had loved her and who had used her, and so did I. The envelope is empty now. The documents are filed away in Mr. Henderson's office, evidence of choices made and boundaries drawn, but the lesson remains. Your worth is not negotiable. Your truth does not require permission. Your voice matters, especially when others would prefer your silence. These are the gifts Grandma Rose left me, not just money or property, but permission to value myself, permission to expect better, permission to walk away from people who couldn't see my worth. The most precious inheritance of all, the knowledge that I deserve to be chosen, not tolerated, loved, not endured, celebrated, not managed. That is family. Real family, the kind worth fighting for, the kind worth choosing.